Alright, so today we're going to do another little project that's going to help us hopefully make the connection between using arrays and using loops, but also like creating our own object so that we can use it inside of a program. Okay, so the idea that we're going to have today is that we're going to have some kind of a program that is based off of like that My World program. And we're going to be able to make basically targets inside of there of different sizes and colors. This is an easy game. Basically, if you click inside of one of these things, so if I click inside of this, this thing is going to get a little bit bigger. Okay? If I click in there again, it's going to get a little bit bigger. All right? And so really it's just the idea of us, building something where we define what this thing is. We define how we're interacting with this interface, and we're using an array of these objects. Okay, so we're going to call each of these objects in here a target because it's what we're trying to hit. Okay, and then as we hit a target, it's going to get bigger. It's going to grow. So that's basically like a behavior that thing has. All right. So what we should notice about these targets is that each of them has a different position, each of them has a different size, and then what we can't show right here, but we're going to also have is that each of them will have a different color. Okay, so let's move over to Eclipse and let's get started with that. So inside of arrays and loops, we're going to go ahead and make a new class, and this thing is going to be called target. All right, this is the thing inside of the game. All right, so target should start out looking like that, and what we need to do first is define the properties of target inside of basically variables. Okay, so what we're going to do there is going to go ahead and say every target has an X and a Y, and that defines its position. Every target has a radius, and that defines basically its size. And then every target has a color, which defines its color. All right. And so we've heard these things called instance variables. So we're declaring instance variables here. All right. And so those are the properties or the characteristics of a target. Okay, if you guys have color underlined like I do, remember that that's something that needs to be imported. And so when we just mouse over that thing, it'll give us this option to import color so that I can use that type of variable. Just click on that and it adds this import statement up here. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to write a constructor. And this is used to initialize the properties of a target. So I'm going to close my Project Explorer here so I can fit this all on one page here. Okay. So the way I write a constructor here is we're going to start with the word public, then we're just going to put the name of the class next. Okay, and now that's a constructor. I want to put parameters inside of the constructor, okay, because I want the game that I'm going to make to be able to make different targets. Okay, so in other words, I got to go inside of these parentheses, and I got to go in here and say, what is the X going to be? What is the Y going to be? What is the radius going to be? And what is the color going to be for this target? All right, so we separate each of those with commas like we've done before. All right, and then inside of the constructor, what we're doing is we're going to assign these variables to those parameters. So we're going to say X equals the X, Y equals the Y, radius equals the radius, and color equals the color. All right, and we'll probably come back and look at that a little bit more in a little bit. Okay, so there's a few things that we want every target to be able to do. Okay, we said that like one of the things we want it to be able to do is grow. Okay, get bigger. One of the things we're going to want it to be able to do is like tell us whether it was selected or not out of all of the other targets. Like, are you the one that was selected? Okay. But one of the things we definitely want to do is we want this thing to be able to draw itself. Okay. And so inside of here, we're also going to create a draw method. In order to draw, remember that we need some graphics. So we're putting that in as a parameter. And when we draw, we're going to do a couple things. But first, I guess what I'll do is I'll import graphics. So just mouse over graphics again. Import it so that we can use it. And then inside of this thing, we're going to go ahead and say g.setColor. Okay? And so we're taking the graphics, we're changing the color, and we want the color to be set to whatever color this target is. Okay? So we're using this variable right here to set the color of the graphics, and that variable got its value from the parameter the color. All right? So the next thing is we want to tell this thing to basically fill in a circle or fill in an oval. Okay? And I just want to kind of give you guys some information as far as that goes on where that's going to come from. Okay? So let me just kind of slide this over here. What we're going to do is say that this is the point that defines the position of that. Kind of similar to what we did with O's and X's in tic-tac-toe. Okay? So that point is the XY coordinate that defines the position of that target. But graphics needs to know this point right here so that it can make this imaginary box and then fill my oval inside of that imaginary box. All right? So the question is basically like, how do I get from this X coordinate back to this X coordinate? Is there anything that I can use here to tell me how to get from there to there? The radius, right? So this is a radius, and that's a radius, right? And so this point right here is X minus the radius and Y minus the radius. Okay? And then the other thing we need to know is we need to know what this width is, how far it is from here all the way over to here. And I also need to know this height from here all the way down to there. What would that be? So let's think about this. How far have I gone if I go from there to there? One radius. How far have I gone if I go from here all the way over to there? Two radiuses, okay, or two radii. All right, same thing here. From here down to there, one radius, all the way down to there, two radii. All right, so we're going to take that and we're going to come over here and say that when we fill in this oval, we're going to fill it in at X minus radius, Y minus radius, and we're going to have a width that's 2 times the radius, which you could call a diameter, but we don't have a diameter variable, and 2 times the radius for the height as well. Okay? So what this does then is fills an oval centered over X and Y. Okay? And I guess if you wanted to, you could say that that's a circle, because the width and the height of the oval are the same. Okay, so far so good? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make our target world, okay, or our game. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to make a new class, and I'm going to call this thing target world. I want that to extend my world, and I want that to have a main method. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that. I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit, get rid of some of this stuff, some of these comments that we don't really need to have in there. Okay, so target world has a main method here at the bottom. We're going to say that we want a new target world. Okay, and so if I run that, I just get one of these like default my world looking frames. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to add some targets onto there. Okay, so we're going to add 5 targets onto there, but we're going to do it using an array. So I've created my own class called target. So now I can make an object of targets. Okay, so I can go target array targets, and I'm going to put in here that I want 5 targets altogether. So new target with a 5 there. Okay. So this is an array of 5 target objects. All right. You guys with me so far? This right here is a call to the target world constructor, which I haven't written one yet. So I'm going to go ahead and write one right now. So we're going to go public target world. And then inside of that target world constructor, I'm going to build my first target. Okay? James. So I'm going to go targets at 0. That's my first element inside of the array. And I want that to be a new target. And I'm just going to kind of make up some points right here. So I'm going to say I want this thing to be at 100, 100. Okay. I want this to have a radius of 50. And I want this thing to be the color red. Okay. I think what just happened is that it automatically imported the color class. If that didn't happen for you, you might have to import color. Okay? So I'm going to close this Project Explorer just so that it's a little less distracting there. And then I'm going to split my screen so you guys can see both what we just did and what's down here in Target. Okay. So what I just did is I made target at 0 to be a new target, and this thing is calling to the constructor. So 100 is being sent down here to the X. Okay? What is the radius's value? 50, right? So this 100 goes to the Y, this 50 goes to the radius, and then red goes to the color. So I'm saying here that I want this target at 0 to be a target with those values, okay? And then down here in target, it assigns its X to the X, and Y to the Y, radius and color get assigned as well, all right? So that when I'm up here, when I'm in target world now, okay, if I tell target 0, so we're adding a little bit of code here, if I add targets at 0, if I tell it to draw, and then I run this thing again, now I have this target that got drawn.